Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Wow. I think I say wow all the time. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't already, please bless me by hitting the thumbs up and sharing this video. We're going to talk about President Trump, of course, and how as I refer to him, the Democrats have lost their everlasting mind. So I might just have a guest on with me today. We're going to see here. Um, I'm going to bring a guest on and have a deep discussion, deep dive about the current Democrat Party and what the Democrat Party future is going to look like. So I'm really interested in seeing what that's going to look like. And you know me, I love having conversations with people who have different opinions than me. I mean, it's one of my pet peeves. I mean, I really like it. First, let me put it this way. When I was younger, this is maybe 15, 20 years ago, I had a gentleman that I worked with, who was a colleague actually, and he was atheist. I was Christian. But I remember on Friday evenings, we would always connect with one another and we would have these deep discussions and it get really heated, really heated. And he'd go, "You want another beer?" And I go, "Yeah, sure." So we always were able to get along and have those conversations. So I think I've got accustomed to being able to have conversations with people that completely disagree with me. And, we agree to disagree. Well, I want to have this discussion, and I got this young man on with me. Is Ike McCorkle?
Yes,
He's a,
sir.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. I was just saying, yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. A former Marine and Democrat, and I'm assuming you're still a Democrat, and comes from a family deeply rooted in military service with relatives who served in the Army and World War II. And he has run for political office in the state of Colorado. Sir, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, I appreciate you having me. And like you were mentioning in your intro, those conversations with folks that don't necessarily agree with us on every single, letter of the policy are critical, I think, for ensuring that the United States does what's best by our veterans and by our citizens.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I think we need to have open discussion. And so let's talk about a little bit about that because one of the big things right now is free speech. And as we're talking, it appears to be now I don't know firsthand. I don't have access to the servers or anything, but it would appear to be that X is having a cyber attack that's taking place. Now, nothing's happening with YouTube, nothing Google, Facebook, even True Social's even up, but X is experiencing some major outages. And again, just to be clear, full transparency, I can't say, but it would appear that they would be getting a cyber attack. And the reason why I say that because of Elon Musk and what he's doing with Doge. What is your opinion about the reason why X is down right
Oh, well, I don't have any specific knowledge, like you mentioned, of cyber attacks currently taking place. So, although, like you mentioned, it's certainly not out of the realm of possible whatsoever. It could be, some 400-pound guy in his basement, or it could be a foreign state actor. It's hard to say, and we'll have to wait for the reports to come out on that.
now? Yeah.
So far as the actions being taken by Doge, yeah, I have to categorically almost disagree with the actions that Doge is currently taking, just because of the impact to veterans. Former service members, and not just veterans, but their families. A whole
Right.
lot of veterans' families, like my own, work as DoD contractors, whether it's like my ex-spouse. She advises folks on how to properly manage their financial situations and really set our service members and our veterans up for success. And so I think a lot of those critical positions that are being cut, unfortunately, are impacting veterans and their families to a severe degree. And so, I do think that there's a better way to do it. I'm not saying that there's not government waste, because there sure as heck is. I mean, Congressional Budget Office identified something like 95 billion in waste that we could cut without impacting, our
So
veterans
I
service.
so
I
I'm
think
sorry.
that's road we need to take. Go ahead.
So
Apologize.
are you in agreement with Doge?
With Doge on the notion that there is government waste and that it definitely needs to be addressed, and how we allocate funds in order to ensure that the United States is a technological military superiority in the on the globe. Then yes, I 100% agree. We need to address waste. We need to make sure that we're investing our funds efficiently and effectively in the technologies and in the industries, in the rare earth mineral asset development that we need to do in order to make sure that, like I mentioned, the United States remains the hyperpower that it became post World War II. And my like you mentioned, my family served. My papa was a Jewish Army Air Corps pilot that flew missions over Nazi Germany. My grandpa Alfred helped liberate Nazi concentration camps. Um, and military service is in my heritage.
So to go back to Doge again, is there anything you disagree with Doge is doing?
Oh, 100%.
Okay,
Like I
give me
mentioned
one
initially,
example. Give me one example.
sure thing. And like I mentioned initially, I do categorically, just about across the board, disagree with the way that they're going about identifying cuts. Um, and so one of the things that I would disagree with Doge on is on cutting 6,000 IRS agents that specialize in the auditing of guess who, the super rich and the corporations that they own, to ensure that the investment that needs to be there in terms of tax dollars and in terms of investing in U.S. military power is there. And so I disagree with crippling the IRS's ability to ensure that people aren't offshoring their assets and escaping the tax code, because that impacts our military capabilities and impacts so on and so forth. 80 jobs are kind of that veterans receive. It's going to drastically impact services like the suicide prevention hotline, which is really critical, especially for our Iraq, Afghanistan war veterans like myself that need someone to talk to every once in a while. And so, yeah, those are two areas where I completely disagree with cutting and at the Department of Defense. Frankly speaking, we are in one of the most unstable periods of history in our lifetimes with
Okay,
respect to geopolitics, and we
all right.
absolutely have to counter the communist Chinese threat and the Russian Federation, and ensure that again we remain the hyperpower.
So let me ask you this: are you saying this is happening because of President Trump's policies, what he's putting in place with Doge? And I mean, because as far as a conservative, I know conservatives they're loving everything that President Trump is doing, and with these what he's addressing these issues like USAID, pouring money into programs that we don't need to pour money into. And there's a lot of that that's taking place. Now there are some programs that have been beneficial, and President Trump has acknowledged that. But the wasteful spending that has gone above and beyond, all of it seems on the surface, it looks and appears that all of the Democrats are in support of the wasteful spending to continue. Is it
Uh,
just
uh,
me, or is
No,
that the
because I
case?
agree with some of the cuts, and I agree with a lot of President Trump's agenda in terms of cutting wasteful spending. And so, like I mentioned earlier, I do acknowledge that there's a lot of wasteful spending. I do even acknowledge that my own party at times, has supported some of that wasteful spending. Now, categorically across the board, I don't think that they've allocated wasteful spending intentionally. However, I think we have to talk about our ideals and what our objective end states are, actually what our priorities are. Because when you talk about USAID, for instance, you have funding for vaccinations and stuff around the globe that suppress, communicable diseases that come over here and affect us as well. So there is some spending that is good, and that also benefits the American people. But there's also a lot of spending that just simply doesn't, need to be allocated, especially not when there are veterans on the streets, hungry, going without
Right.
services right here in our own country. And so I absolutely believe in terms of an America First policy so far as investing in the United States first, taking care of our veterans first, making sure we develop our rare earth mineral assets, ensuring that we reshore American industry and jobs, and ensuring that the rich and the corporations that they own don't escape the tax code and offshore their assets and wealth, because that really, if you examine the budgetary issues that are at hand, is the real problem. That there's plenty of revenue. It's just that folks aren't paying their fair share. And unfortunately, when you look at investment, that's how we remain the world's hyperpower. And if we don't make those critical investments, if we allow the rich and then their corporations to continue to offshore our jobs, our industry, and our production, we're going to end up in a place where we are like we are right now, where we can't even produce the things that our military needs to operate on the battlefield, whether that's enough munitions to support a two-front war, which is a possibility, or whether it's developing the rare earth mineral assets that power our technological superiority. So I think that in terms of revenue, we're talking about a lack of dollars issue for a specific reason. I don't think that that's overspending or waste, although overspending and waste does occur. I think it's really tied to avoidance of the tax code
So, do you are
and the
you? Let me
and the
ask you
absence.
this. Let me ask you
Sorry to
this.
interrupt, but and the absence of a fair tax code. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, sir.
So, when Joe Biden was in office, they neglected to help the veterans. Am I wrong? Because Democrats have been known to want to defund police officers, for example, and they also want to defund the military. They're not for the military. They're for actually breaking down the military. And then when we talk about wasteful spending, the Democrats are quick to come out and talk about, well, we need to cut the defense budget bill, all this money. Now, there's been money going to the Pentagon. I think we all agree. And now that Pete Hegseth is there talking about, and he's saying that we're going to do an audit of a Pentagon. Now, all of a sudden, the Democrats don't want to do, budget cuts in the Pentagon, like because they might find some wasteful spending that they don't want to prevent. And President Trump has made it clear when he was in office the first time, the vets are one of his number one priorities.
Well, cutting 83,000 jobs at the Veterans Administration doesn't show me that. But when we're talking about taking care of the military, for instance, or we're talking about supporting or not supporting, funding for our military, I think you're right that the broad perception has been that Democrats in general don't support the military, that Democrats in general want to cut the defense budget. But I think that you're just talking about a segment of our party. In other words, on both sides of the aisle, the extremes have captured the narrative. And that's unfortunate, because when you talk about the substance of policy, about the letter of each and every issue, for instance, military funding, or go back and look at the votes, I think that you'll see that there are a lot of Democrats that don't agree with cutting the Defense Department's budget. They might agree with auditing it for sure. However, from my perspective, like I mentioned, we live in a very unstable era, and we live in an era where there are extreme threats and technological near equivalents in the form of the communist China, and threats in the form of the Russian Federation that we absolutely have to counter. And if we don't counter, we're not going to retain the hegemony that we've had over the past century.
Would you
So
agree? Would you agree that President Trump is actually bringing back safety and security to the United States of America, where Joe Biden was doing just the opposite?
I see. I have a more nuanced view of it than that. I don't necessarily think that if you talk about each and every I guess region or geopolitical issue, I don't think necessarily Democrats are wrong on all the issues. I don't necessarily think that Republicans are wrong on all the issues.
What are the
And that's
Democrats right on?
and I'll answer that. And that's why I think it's critical for Democrats and for Republicans and independent Americans that are of like mind, that are a common sense based, that want to ensure that we retain our hegemony and our superiority, technological and militarily speaking. And so, one of the things I think that Democrats are right on is, for instance, expanding the Veterans Choice Program, which allowed veterans to go out and see docs in their local community, especially when they're at a distance from the VA or a VA is not available. And so that veteran choice program is sunsetting. And this Congress is looking to allow it to sunset. And unfortunately, that's going to cut services for veterans. So, I think there are some issues where the Democratic Party is right. I think there's some issues where the Republican Party is right. And I think we need to come to consensus on ensuring that, we have policy that sets us up for success and that unifies Americans around our shared values again. Because I honestly believe that the division in the United States is artificial, it's intentional, and I think that we have to come together, we the people, around our common core
That
shared values again.
that is true, and I think it is artificial, but I don't think we've been this divided since the first Civil War. And I think it's getting hotter and hotter every single day that President Trump is in office. Um, I think that let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Why is it difficult for Democrats that are politicians to say America first?
Well, I think it's the historical context. And so,
I mean,
excuse
but
me,
with this, I mean, just
I'll
can
answer
we?
it more.
Why can't we just say America first? Is there a problem with saying America first, or do we want to?
I I've been trying to break down the knee-jerk reaction to that America First term because I do believe in America First policy. I've just been describing it. I think we need to make sure we invest in United States industry and infrastructure and ensure that we develop our rare earth mineral assets and that we make alliances, with our partners. One thing that I can agree, although I categorically disagree with the way that he's gone about doing it, is the Ukraine policy. I think that minerals deal would, in fact, be a good thing for Ukraine and the United States because it would put American
So
assets
why did
on.
Zelensky go along with it?
Yeah, well, because I think that there's unfortunately kind of a conflict that's being created by the way that folks kind of speak to each other in public. And so, I think there's a cordial way to go about it. I think there's an uncordial way to go about it. I think you have to understand when you're dealing with President Trump that he's often going to shoot for the stars, and even though he understands we're probably just going to hit the moon, right? And some of the things he might state, whether it's on Gaza, whether it's on, oh, excuse me, I have a paralyzed vocal cord from a combat injury.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, because I mean, you're talking on subjects that we've
Yeah,
all been talking about here lately. Because President Trump, he had the Zelensky had the meeting in the Oval Office where Zelensky, he could have gotten a deal. All he had to do is just be quiet, but he didn't do that. And allegedly, that he was talking to members of the deep state along with the shadow government before he went in there to talk to President Trump. And they were essentially telling him, don't do the deal with President Trump. They don't want the deal to take place because most of us, we want the war to end, and that's what President Trump's objective is to end the war. But Zelensky and many of those that are I call them rhinocrats, and I call them democrats because I can give you my reasoning for that, but
all right.
uh, and they don't want the war to end. And it's really odd to me because when I was younger, I was always told that Republicans were for rich old white men and the Democrats were for minorities and women, which is not the case any longer. And they were not for war. They were against war when Republicans are. But now here's a Republican president trying to end wars, and the Democrats wanted to continue. Is Ukraine the 51st state, or am I missing something?
Well, I think you have to understand the security risks that go along with losing that war. And that definitely includes, the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, um, Croatia, Slovenia, yeah, in the former Yugoslavia, Moldova. We're talking about a whole bunch of former Soviet vassal states, right? And, we already understand and know what Vladimir Putin's in state objective is, and that's to reconstitute the Soviet Union and the Russian Empire. He's stated quite plainly that that's his objective. And so I think that with Zelensky, you have to understand that he's terrified for himself and for his family and for his people. And so when he's offered a deal but not given, security guarantees, that frankly we've already given to the people of Ukraine when they gave up those 1,600 nuclear weapons after the breakup of the Soviet Union. Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States
What?
guaranteed that we would defend their sovereignty
But
as a state. And so
why?
I
Why
think
do
that,
we have to be their security?
well, I don't think that we should. I think that we should ensure, and this is only one. Well, one part of President Trump's policy that I agree with is the fact that it has kicked Europe's tail end into gear. And
Oh,
Poland is investing 5% GDP
right.
into defense, and I think that the European states, they have vastly more economic
N-
wealth than Russia. So they
So
can buy their own weapons, they can pay for their own defense, and I think that they're going to.
okay.
That's good in-state result. But I think you have to understand where Zelensky's coming from. He just wants security guarantees that are written in stone to ensure that, again, Ukraine, the sovereign nation of Ukraine, democratically elected sovereign nation of Ukraine, is not invaded again. Um, after these deals are made,
So
because Vladimir Putin has a history of violating the deals that he makes.
let me ask you. I mean, how did the war start? I know we all. I think we all agree that Putin invaded. No, there's
Right.
no dispute there. But how did it start? Did the war just start because he invaded, or what caused the war? What caused him to invade?
Well, I think again, we know what Vladimir Putin's, because of his, direct statements, we know exactly what Vladimir Putin's end state objective is, and that's reconstituting the Soviet Union and the glory of the Russian
So it
Empire.
so it had
And
nothing to do had nothing to do with Zelensky holding papers up saying, "Yep, I got the papers. I signed them to join NATO." Had nothing to do with that. After Putin numerous times said, "If you try to join NATO, we're going to invade. If you try to expand NATO up to our borders, we're going to invade." And then one week, I think it was February of 2022, February, I can't remember the exact day. I think maybe it was like the 17th or so. Kamala Harris went over to Ukraine and was talking to Zelensky. And then right after that, Zelensky came out and said, "Yes, we're getting ready to do it. We're getting ready to become part of NATO." And then the following week, Putin invaded. But that wouldn't have anything to do with it, right?
you have to understand that the sovereign nation of Ukraine has a right to, and the NATO alliance has a right to admit members.
No,
And so,
no, I think everyone would
and
agree to
so
that,
we
but
can't
I
let
think Putin has already
right.
made it clear, though, even because NATO was created because of Russia. NATO was created because of Russia, and Putin has made it clear throughout the years. It's not the first time throughout the years that if you become part of NATO, if you try to become part of NATO, you give us no choice but to invade. So would that have anything to do with it? I mean, maybe
I'm
just a
not saying
little.
I'm not saying that's not a factor, right? However, I think knowing Vladimir Putin's objective in state and understanding his history, we know that he already planned to invade and has had his eyes set on Ukraine
I'm,
ever
I'm,
since
I'm,
the breakup of the Soviet Union.
I'm at the
And so
point.
he's after the same mineral asset deal that we're after,
Hey,
except he's just going to take them,
you ever play
right?
Risk? You ever play the board game
Oh
Risk?
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I mean, hey, look, it happens in the real world too. And if Zelensky is not going to come on board with President Trump's plan, then I mean, if Russia takes it, then it's kind of out of President Trump's hands, out of everybody's hands. I don't think that we should spend all these resources and send all this money to Ukraine. Now, if we want to send some blankets like Obama did, okay, fine. We'll send some
Well, I
blankets like
disagree
Obama
categorically with that. Now, I
well, let
think
me, well,
The Obama administration was horrendously negligent, and God bless President Trump for sending the Ukrainians those javelins that were critical in their ability to stop the Russian Federation's invasion. And say what you want about Sleepy Joe, but his policy of continuing President Trump's policy from his first administration of arming and funding Ukraine is the only reason why the 90%
but
of Russian armor has been
but
destroyed on the battlefield. No other U.S.
but
president.
Ukraine is not going to beat Russia, though. I mean, they're not going to beat them. I mean, the only reason why Ukraine has anything in the game, had a card, like President Trump mentioned, the only reason why they had a card is because the United States of America was giving them that card. Now, the United States of America, personally, if we would have just never got involved in the war, it would have ended in a week or 3 days. It would have ended really quick. There's no reason why we should be in this conflict. But let me go back to this question I was asking earlier.
There is one. The George W. Bush administration guaranteed the sovereignty and security of the Ukrainian state. That's why when they gave up their 1,600 nukes.
Well, that's their problem. Maybe they shouldn't have gave them up. I mean, that's out of our control.
They shouldn't have. I agree. I was dumb for when that happened. I had the premonition as a young sergeant in the Marine Corps that, wow, that was really stupid, and Russia's gonna invade. It's just a matter of time.
What year was that?
Well, back in 2008, 2007, I may have already been a staff sergeant.
So it took him until 2022 to do that. I think the reason why he did it is because of what they were trying to do in the NATO. But let me ask you this question: America first. America first. Now, you started going to the reason why the Democrat politicians on Capitol Hill refuse to say America first. Why won't they say America first? Why is that such a stain for them to say? Are they not for America? Apparently, they're not.
No, they're 100% for America first. And you can argue about the substance of policy and what is America first policy, but I think it's kind of disingenuous or a parodying of a propaganda to say that Democrats or Republicans are not, for the sovereignty, security, and prosperity of the.
They were for open borders. If they're for sovereignty, it would have been for closed borders. I mean, we just experienced that for the past 3 years. They're not for our sovereignty. So why they have such a difficult time saying America first?
Well, I'm speaking to you right now, as a lifelong registered Democrat.
I used to be one too.
And my granddad, was a lifelong registered Democrat.
Okay.
Also a big Eisenhower fan. And so I think we got to get away from the artificial, instigated, intentional separation of Americans. Now, but
we have to acknowledge that it is there. I mean, we can say that, we want to get away from, the Republicans, the right, the left, red and blue, but it is there. And it is an element that's there. And but again, the Democrats have demonstrated time and time again, especially the last 4 years, that they are America last. They won't even say it in any of their statements. They won't say it in any videos. They won't even put it in an X post.
I'll tell you why. And it's because of the historical context of the America First movement. The America First movement, historically speaking, and you can look up the silver shirts and you can look up the whole movement that occurred back in that Charles Lindbergh supported, that Henry Ford supported. But it was a literal United States American Nazi Party movement back in the World War II era, and the post-World War II era extended all the way into the McCarthy era. But America First was a fascist party, and that's why the context of saying America First is so off-putting and so knee-jerk reacted to by some Democrats. I mean, that's just. But
we can even go back further for America First to even 1776. 1776 was all America First. Now you can't. So if a group adopts a term like they did, you can't just say all of a sudden that, there's a stain on America by saying America first, because 1776 was all about America first. And most of us are still in support of 1776 because they don't want our country to be overran by communist, woke, leftist liberals. I mean, because that's what we're seeing right now, because we're having an issue right now with liberals are wanting men to be in girls' safe spaces in the sports. I mean, it's everything is like getting flipped upside down, and America first should be on. Democrats right now should stand up and say, you know what, we are America first because we actually are for the small man. We're for the businessman. We're for the people that's struggling right now to purchase eggs. We're for that, but they're not. They've demonstrated that they're not. Now they'll come out and say that they're for the small man and want people to be able to buy eggs. Trump said on first day one, he's gonna bring down the prices of eggs. And they know good and well that all the chickens that were slaughtered, they know good and well all the chickens that were slaughtered before President Trump went in office, but they don't ever bring that up.
Well, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying that you support America First policy, America First industrial policy, America First military policy,
And Trump is doing that, but you have Democrats on Capitol Hill that's pushing against that. It's like they don't want to insult someone. It's like, for example, the American flag. Right now, if you go down the street and you see someone with American flag on their vehicle or American flag hanging from their home, that must be a Republican. Why? Isn't that a problem?
All the time, because I've got one on my truck.
But you understand what I'm saying, because you get a lot of that, and that shouldn't be the case.
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. And I think that that's part of the artificial division, and I think that if we can all get away from blanket generalizations, my uncle used to tell me, generalizations generally make us wrong, because there's somebody in that party like myself or like Seth Moulton or like Jason Crow that are national security Democrats. I mean, FDR was a Democrat, right? I mean, he won the World War One. He instituted New Deal policy that industrially, technologically, materially set us up to win World War II and become the superpower that we are today. And so there's good policy and there's good intent on both sides of the aisle, and good Americans on both sides of the aisle.
I had to argue the good intent from the left. I don't know. I mean, give me an example of their good intent.
All right. Well, I mean, good intent is my good intent. What I'm engaged right now. Right?
So
if we set the whole, if we set the whole party aside and we're talking about a bunch of kids living in tents, protesting against my family in Israel and their security.
So how are you a Democrat then?
You can talk about the crazy woke left, right?
How are you a Democrat knowing that they do that?
And we can talk about the crazy radical right too, but unfortunately, I think it's a symptom of our political primary process, and that over years and years, and of course the unwarranted influence of finances in our politics, but the primary process selected by party, folks who are very involved and very active in the party, unfortunately, has pushed us further and further to the extremes on both sides of the aisle, and got us further and further away from American security and prosperity, and understanding that there are good Americans and good intent on both sides of the aisle.
To my understanding, you're Jewish, correct?
Yeah, yes, sir.
So I actually I know a lot of Jewish people. I actually have a colleague who's Jewish, and the ones that I know happen to be conservative. And I have a really difficult time, and I ask them this question all the time, knowing what Chuck Schumer has done with Israel, and I know you can't be happy with them. And then you have Jerry Nadler, and then you have the predominant Democrats that actually demonstrate their disdain for Israel. Why in the world would anyone Jewish support the Democrat Party? I mean, to give another example, I'm a black male, if you haven't noticed. Not that it really matters, it does. None of that matters. But why would anybody black continue to support the Democrat Party, knowing what the Democrat Party is truly about? They're still for slavery in the year 2025, and I can prove it to you.
All right, well, I'm waiting. Where's that?
Okay.
I'm not pro-slavery. But I think that again, I think that we're kind of we're echoing or parroting talking points that are designed to divide the American people. And if you talk about the substance and the character, the individuals in office, that you can't categorically speak about the entire Democratic Party that way. In the same light that I can't talk about the entire Republican Party as being, associated with, the alt right or is associated with the American Nazi Party, even though there's American Nazi Party members that are members of the Republican Party as well. Like that's a correlation. It's not causation, and it's not reality, and it's not the reality of the entirety of the Republican Party, who's of course primarily interested in American security and prosperity. Well, the Democratic Party, most of the members are primarily focused and concerned with American prosperity and security, right? And so I think that we got to come to terms with policy that both sides can find acceptable, and we got to stop dividing our people
So,
over these talking points, not reality. And
well, I
from
mean, but the reality is that the Democrat Party is actually pushing back on, for example, again, the wasteful spending. Elon Musk stopping the wasteful spending. They're actually pushing. They're advocating. What is
I
it?
don't think that
Raskin said that he does a rally a day to push the fascists away. So basically, they're doing rallies against Elon Musk because he's exposing all of this stuff. And to go and there's a
exposing it. It's not because he's exposing anything. It's because of the way he's going about doing it,
he's
and
being
it's
transparent. We know about it. He's being transparent. I guess the Democrats don't want him to be transparent about it because when Obama was in
it's
office,
not.
he did the
Yeah,
exact same thing. Obama did executive order to cut out the wasteful spending, but they were not being public about it. They weren't telling people about the wasteful spending that they were cutting out. So far as we know, he didn't do anything. But here in this case, we have
well,
transparency because you and we see what's happening.
I
We
don't
get to
think there
talk
is
about it. And the Democrats don't like transparency.
No, I would disagree with that categorically. I would say that most Democrats want a transparent and an accountable process, and we want an accountable process that's orchestrated by an elected official or an appointed
That's
official
President Trump.
who has Senate approval. We
That's
don't want
President
to
Trump.
unelect. We don't want an unelected bureaucrat, Elon Musk, and his Doge outfit
He's
plowing plowing through Americans'
See, now
personal.
that right there is straight up the talking point because President Trump can hire people to work in his administration. They don't have to be cabinet selects like Pete
Right?
Hegseth, Pam Bondi, right? They don't have to be cabinet selects, but he can hire people to work in his administration. And that's all that Elon Musk is. He's currently an employee under President Trump's administration. That's all
Right.
that is. Now that is a talking point. Talking about he's an unelected bureaucrat, and you know what? We elected
It's
President
not a
Trump to
talking
do
point,
what is
it's
happening.
reality. That's reality, but they're plowing through Americans' personally identifiable
Okay,
information.
okay.
They're plowing.
He hired Elon Musk to do it. What is the problem? If Elon Musk finds out that there's been $2 trillion of wasteful spending, or in this case, $6 trillion that just went out the door, and there's no accountability for it, they can't even tell you where it went. There's no receipts telling you who received that money. And he's telling the American people about the $6 trillion that just poof and it's gone. That's a problem. I mean,
I
I
think
thank you, Elon Musk, right?
I think that the budget issues are a major problem, and that Congress needs to do its job. And quite frankly, that is Congress's job. And I don't think that it's the job of an unelected bureaucrat to plow through Americans, to plow through the Social
what what
Security.
what makes Elon a bureaucrat?
That's, that's
What makes Elon Musk a bureaucrat? Because he's doing this. He's doing
yeah.
this for free. He's not getting paid.
He's a billionaire, and he's benefiting personally from all of these transactions and deals, and
How's he benefit?
kicking telecommunication, giants out of contracts, and replacing them with his own Starlink contracts. I think
That's
that
not
the
true.
American people
Come on.
absolutely want
That's not true though.
American people want a transparent process, and I'll tell you what else we don't want.
Wait. You made a statement that he. Wait a minute. You just
we
made
don't
a
want
statement that Elon Musk is transferring the communication to his Starlink. And that's
Yeah,
not true. And it's the same thing like they were
not
saying that
transferring
Elon
communication,
Musk got
transferring
the got
contracts.
and Elon Musk got
Contracts.
the contract for his Tesla trucks, and that happened under
That's
Joe
the
Biden, and President Trump canceled it.
Yeah, I'm talking about the federal contract that Verizon's being kicked out of that Starlink's taking over. It's like a $2 billion contract or something. But what the American people don't want
But
is is a
is
billionaire
is
is a
Verizon
billion
a
unelected
private company or is
billionaire
it a
taking
government
away.
agency?
Can I finish? An unelected
I'm,
billionaire
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just got to make sure I
taking away.
understand though. I just got to make sure I understand what you just said because you said the deal that he has with Verizon, the government's kicking Verizon out and working with Starlink.
Yeah, they canceled the current the negotiated contract with the telecommunication company Verizon, and Starlink is now taking that contract over, and so there's conflicts of interest here. But what I was saying is what the American people don't want is they don't want an unelected billionaire bureaucrat taking away grandma's $2,000 Social Security
And
check
that's
that
not happening either. That's another talking point.
I believe that is going to
Oh, you
happen.
believe? Okay, see,
I'm extremely concerned, and I think that the American
that's
people
fear
have the right.
mongering. President Trump has already made it clear that Medicaid, Social Security is not going to be touched. Now, the one thing that will be touched is that the wasteful spending. If they find wasteful spending in Social Security, then by all means, I think you would agree that wasteful spending for the Social Security money going out to stuff that it doesn't need to go out for, I think you would agree that, yeah, stop that because you paid in Social Security, grandma paid in Social Security, that money should go to her and not go to external countries for whatever woke agenda that they have.
Definitely, and I agree there needs to be accountability. But I would, for one, like an appointed cabinet secretary and the Congress to be reviewing these things. That's my perspective. That to me is transparency and accountability. What's going on right now is kind of, dropping a friggin' atom bomb on an anthill. It's not.
What's the subcommittee for then?
Say again.
What's the Doge subcommittee for?
The Doge subcommittee.
Yes, sir.
I'm not actually understanding what's
So,
it
because you're
for.
saying that there needs to be like some
Government.
checks and balances about what Elon Musk is doing, and to my understanding, that's where the Doge subcommittee comes in because there's both Republicans and Democrats that sit on the committee. Correct?
Right, but they're engaged in budgetary actions. And so I think that the Congress has the power of the purse. They need to exercise it and ensure that every budgetary issue and consideration and cut is coming by them, and that they're approving or disapproving it before those cuts are made, because that's Congress's constitutionally designated power. That's what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be an equally powerful branch of government. They're
Right.
supposed to control the budget.
So
And
that's where the executive branch comes in, and that's what's happening right now. President Trump hired Elon Musk and hired some 20-year-olds to come in with Elon Musk to actually comb through all of the wasteful spending that Congress has been actually passing, because Congress, someone needs to check Congress. Executive branch comes into play. And if there's wasteful spending coming out that's going out to other countries that hate America, that doesn't even benefit us, I think the executive branch, we expect that to happen, to say, you know what, we need to put a freeze on this. We need to stop this. Why is this money going out? Because, for example, USAID, the billions of dollars going to USAID, and then they just designated money to go out to fraudulent, corrupt, woke agendas that should have never taken place in the first place.
which woke agendas are we talking about?
Okay, well, one is was $47,000 that went to Colombia for a transgender opera.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm totally fine with cutting that. I don't
But
care.
the point is, it was going out. That's just one example of thousands that they found. That's just one example that it should have never taken place. And
Right.
the Democrats are upset with Elon Musk for being transparent, for cutting it out, because he let us know that he cut it out.
I think that they're more upset about the way that it's being done, not necessarily
What's wrong with the way it's being done?
not wrong, not that wasteful spending is being addressed. The way it's being done is with absolutely zero transparency. In the dark of the night, kids on their laptops and enforcing their way into federal
They're
administrative
out.
computer systems It's not being done in an accountable manner. It's
How?
not being done in a professional or accountable manner, right? And so,
Wait,
like,
wait, wait,
I
wait,
want Congress to do their job.
wait.
If I was a congressman, I would floor legislation to friggin' audit every federal administration for sure.
Okay,
And
wait. So wait,
Congress,
wait a minute. These are
Congress,
these young people that that Elon Musk have with him are extremely bright, and at the same time, they're hired in they're hired in President Trump's administration. So for that fact, they've gone through background checks. That everything has been verified with them because they're not going to have access to some of the most sensitive data in the federal government without going through these background checks and President Trump approving it. And at the same time, they're not forcing their way into the systems when you have the man in the White House granting them access. Why are we saying that? Why are we saying that they're forcing their way in when they've been granted access? Because if they were hacking into the system, then we would have to have the FBI get involved, probably Homeland Security, DOJ. We would have to get them involved to probably go arrest them if they were forcing their way in. But that's not taking place. Right?
well, I think that the very untransparent process is taking place with folks that have not been vetted, that don't have security clearances. And quite frankly, I would like to see every United States federal and state representative be required to pass a basic level national security background investigation before they qualify to run for office. And we wouldn't
And
be
you
in
know what? We need to include the
right
U.S.
now.
Constitution with that. I think every single person that runs for political office should have to take a constitutional test to allow
Yep.
them to allow the people that's voting for them to know if they can pass the constitutional test or not. Because Democrats, by experience, they hate the Constitution. They want to do away with it. Probably not you because you served in the military, because there's an exception to the rule here. But most Democrats, they want to do away with the Constitution or they want to rewrite it. Because for the most part, when you've had an organization like USAID working with private entities like Facebook and Twitter at the time to go in and censor the American people, that is a major problem. And President Trump brought that to an end. Now, with that said, it's not that the censorship is still not taking place, because there's still some taking place. And the Democrats are championing behind the censorship against conservatives, meaning that they don't respect the Constitution. They don't like the First Amendment. They don't like the first thing of the Constitution.
Well, I'm an ardent constitutionalist. I believe wholeheartedly in the First Amendment. Spark, speech, press, assemble, religion, petition. I agree. Everyone should have to pass a dang test, and you should be knowledgeable, and you should be able to pass a security background investigation to make sure that foreign adversaries can't blackmail you. And I think we would have a lot more functional government if we had more middle of the road folks like
Who's
myself.
getting blackmailed?
Well, it is not blackmailable, and so the idea is that if you can pass a security background investigation, they've looked at your finances, they've looked at your background, they've looked at your history, and they don't think that you are a national security or potential national security threat. In other words, you're not blackmailable or controllable by any foreign entities,
So
right?
that makes Elon Musk the perfect perfect person for the job, because they can't. There's nothing they can give him to make him do the woke agendas. There's nothing. They can't pay him off. There's nothing.
Except that he represents the unwarranted influence of finances in government and politics. And from my perspective, I think that's one of the biggest
Okay,
problems
let me ask you:
in
would you
politics.
rather have Nancy Pelosi do what he's doing right now?
I would rather the United States Congress,
I'm
whether it's
I'm just saying.
whether
Let's say we appoint somebody. Let's just say we appoint someone. They go through through the Senate and get confirmed. Would you like to see Nancy Pelosi in that position?
I'd like to see a confirmed individual in that position. Nancy
You
Pelosi is
would wait a minute. So you would like to see Nancy Pelosi in that position?
I'd like to see a confirmed
But
official.
I'm asking about Nancy Pelosi. I'm just an example, because we have Elon Musk. You don't like
No,
Elon Musk.
no,
Would you
she's
be
too old.
okay with Nancy Pelosi? And I
No,
know why you're
no,
not
I
answering.
don't. No, 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 I would not. I think
I
that
mean,
we
the
need
insider
some, we
trading
need
would go through the roof. Oh my goodness!
No, I don't want Nancy Pelosi in that position, and we don't need any unelected or unappointed individual in that position doing that work.
We
And
do actually. We need someone who doesn't have vested interest in the government to get some side kickbacks. That's exactly what we need. We need an outsider to come
you
in
know
and
how much
audit
Elon
the
Musk's
federal government.
company, you know how much Elon Musk's contracts get from the federal government on the daily? It's around.
So he has everything. What does he have to gain?
He
There's
has a lot to
nothing,
gain.
huh?
He has a lot to gain. He gets 8 million roughly daily from the United States federal government in contracts, and they're
So did that
two.
start? Did that start with Trump or did that start under Obama?
No, it's long standing, and unfortunately, we've seen the
Why is it a
citizens.
problem now then?
We've seen the Citizens United decision happen, and we've seen the intrusion of unwarranted influence and finance in our politics, and we have a whole Congress full of bought and paid for politicians. That's the problem from my
That's where the
perspective.
bureaucrats come into play, 100%. But he's not.
Yeah,
Elon Musk is not trying to go in there and convince Republicans or Democrats to give him anything. I mean, he doesn't have to. I mean, he really
right.
doesn't. The
Because he's already got eight
technology.
million in contracts per day with the federal government, and he's getting way more.
So if
And
it
so
was George
I don't
Soros,
want
then it would be
I
okay.
don't want an individual with potential conflicts of interest.
So if it was,
If
so
someone's going to serve in that cabinet position and as the head of Doge, they need to divest all their financial interests. They need to put them in blind accounts. They need to put somebody in charge
but
of
he's
it.
not
They
elected. Like
have
you
no
said, he's not
control
elected official. Why should he have to do that? He was hired to come in to do a job.
because he has
And at the same time, he can't make any changes. He can't do anything that would make it beneficial for him.
because
Unlike Nancy Pelosi,
there's huge
unlike
conflict.
Maxine
I got
Waters,
it.
unlike these bureaucrats that have access, been controlling the federal government all of these years.
He does have the ability to benefit, and in fact, he's benefiting to an extreme degree, and he's getting more and more federal contracts, and he has vast conflicts of interest. That's
President
from my
Trump just canceled his contract
problem.
for
That's the problem.
the Tesla trucks, the armored Tesla trucks. President Trump canceled it. Joe Biden had it in place for him. So why would President Trump cancel it if that's the case?
I don't know the specifics behind those contract cancellations, but I do
But
know.
okay, but even though we don't know the specifics, and I get it, right? We don't know specifics on it, and that's fine. But the thing is, President Trump still canceled one of his contracts. He still canceled it. I mean,
That's
so if you
maybe it
if
was
what
for the
you
appearance
oh, it's the
of
appearance.
yeah, I mean, it's important. The appearance of transparency is important, and the perception of the American people of their government, that's important. And so I do think that we need individuals serving that don't have conflicts of interest.
I don't think there is a conflict of interest when it comes to Elon. I mean, he's actually doing what he's doing. Because he doesn't have to do it.
Yeah,
He
I
doesn't
understand.
have to do it. He
I
doesn't have to
understand
do it.
that.
He could. I mean, as of right now, according to Elon Musk, he's been getting death threats. President Trump, of course, he's getting death threats. Just over the weekend, it was two. Within 48 hours, there was two aircrafts that went into the airspace where President Trump was, and I think it was F-15s had to go up and had to escort him out. And there's been multiple attempts on President Trump's life because of what he's doing, and now there's attempts on Elon Musk as well as Cash Patel. Even Cash Patel is looking to get security because there's FBI agents possibly within the FBI that's possibly want to take him out as well. So right now, and of course, these are not radical people on the right wing, radical conservatives that are doing this. This is 100% radical leftist liberals that's doing that.
I would disagree with that. In fact, the one person that attempted to take President Trump's life was and tragically killed the fireman in the process. He was a registered Republican. But I mean, I think that unfortunately we have absolutely a situation in the country where extreme politics are continuing to be exacerbated. And I think it has happened on both sides of the aisle. And we absolutely, I think it's a task of the day is to mitigate that and to bring Americans back together around our shared values and our common end state objective, which is American prosperity, security,
But that's what
And
President. That's his. You know what? You're right. I can't argue with you. We need to together, and I really do enjoy this conversation. I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking with me. But I think President Trump is trying to achieve that. He's trying to bring this country together and to unify and to make everyone's pockets fatter, and that's his whole objective. And but the I don't see, and I have to say this, I don't see the Democrats actually trying to make a difference and even working with President Trump. For example, he gave an address to Congress and they refused to stand for anything. They clapped for when he was talking about money going to Ukraine, but they refused to stand for anything. So the Democrats are demonstrating how much they do not like this country. I mean, now they like the
I don't
country.
think that demonstrates how much they
They like the country if we can continue to have men in women's sports. Then they'll like the country. Let me ask you, what is your viewpoint on that? Being military, what is your viewpoint on that? And men being in the military wearing a dress? Because see, my father, he was in the army, and he was army, and my dad. Now, my dad is like you, to be honest with you. He's Democrat. He doesn't like Trump. He thought Kamala Harris, oh my goodness, was a better option. That's a wild one. I'm glad we dodged that bullet. But men in the military wearing a dress. I mean, really? Where are we going here? And it's the radical left that's pushing that agenda.
Well, I mean, men in the military wearing a dress is already against the rules anyway.
So how were they able to do it then?
You look at the dress code, but I think you're talking, women or men in women's sports, or you're talking men, or inside, a woman's shelter. It's absolutely crazy, right? And Congressman Seth Moulton pointed out very succinctly that he's got a daughter in lacrosse, and he doesn't want a formerly male athlete running over his daughter. Well, I feel the exact same way. And not only that, but women's sports are something that's fairly new on the scene, right? They've fought so long and so hard to have, adequate the adequate, or equal participation in a sports league. I don't think we should be putting men in the middle of that sports league to beat up women. Or,
thank you. Thank you for that. Because I've seen a whole bunch of, on the talk shows. I call it the Communist News Network, or MSDNC, right?
Gotcha.
They'll get on there and they'll justify it. And they'll justify that, these men, and I mean, come on. Especially in the military, my goodness, I don't care how far left you are. If you are a true member of the service or even retired, and you see this got to make your blood boil. I mean, really?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
But speaking more broadly, we don't even have to talk about the military. We could talk about kids, right? And we could talk about kids growing up, and, we could talk about puberty, and we could talk about, kids being taught to learn to love and accept themselves for who they are, for who God made them, instead of, having this idea that they need to be male or female because of something else. But what I categorically disagree with is giving hormonal treatment to kids that haven't even gone through puberty yet, that haven't had the opportunity to learn to love themselves and accept themselves for who they are. So that European countries have set a much more
they've actually pushed. They've stopped a lot of it.
Reasonable standard here, and I think we need to follow suit.
Yeah, well, sir, I want to thank you so much for taking this time and come on and have a discussion with me. You need to come back on with me. I mean, really.
Hey, I can't wait. I'm always around, so send me the text message. I apologize about my voice, I mentioned.
You're fine. You're fine.
I have a paralyzed vocal cord, so I sound like a chicken sometimes.
You're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you so much for hosting this platform and for having the conversations, and God bless you.
God bless you. Take care, sir.
Bye now.
All right, take care. All right, everybody. Good discussions. I love those discussions. We should be able to have conversation with one another and disagree and still have the conversation. That's what it's all about. That's what it's really about. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Hey, if you haven't already, please bless me by hitting the thumbs up. please bless me by hitting that thumbs up. And also go to my website, uniteamericafirst.com, support my network, support my show, help me to continue to go. And we're live on other networks as well. Ex American News. We're live on Ex American News as well. All right, everyone. See you next time. God bless.